welcome back to another Top Dollar Talks. I'm your co-host, E.
I'm the other host, Calvin.
And we're here with Mr.onenine today. He's going to be educating us on the film business and industry. So, Mr.onenine, can you tell us about your story in the background, how you got started?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've been doing media, music, that type of thing since I was in high school. You know, I started with music production actually. You know, and when I went to LSU, I got into beats, and you know, I met different artists, and then by coincidence, I got a camera, started doing interviews with different people, and you know, that kind of got the attention of my first, I guess, big break at Trill ENT, where I'm thinking I'm about to be making beats, but they had me on the computer on MySpace, you know, doing the online promo. From there, I got into graphic design, and I'm kind of trying to kind of condense because it's a lot. And then after the graphic design, I got into the music video situation, which actually started here at Howell Park in 2011 when I shot my first music video. And you know, from there, you know, that's kind of where Straight Up ENT started. So
Yeah. Can you say something?
Yeah. Mr.onenine, so could you tell us, like, you just told us about your experience and what you had to go through. Do you describe it as hard? Do you describe it as easy? How do you describe it?
So yeah, I mean, you really got to be in it for the right reasons. I've always just legit enjoyed music. I enjoyed the arts. I enjoyed the craft. I enjoyed, you know, creating things. You know, so for me, I've always kept a job. So I never relied on my craft and what I love for money. You know, so I really could put my all into it because it isn't about the money. You know, and was it difficult? I don't look at it as difficult. I look at it as a process of leveling up. But I you know, the difference between something being easy and hard is sometimes how many times you've done it. And so, you know, after you've done something for so many times, put in the work, you know, then you get to a point to where it's like second nature. Like right now, this ain't, you know, it ain't nothing. But that doesn't mean that, you know, the difficulty was doing it for so long. You know what I'm saying? Even though at each individual step, it wasn't like, oh man, this is something that I can't handle. You know, it's just, you know, step by step.
Okay, so can you talk more on like what it takes to get through ups and downs in business? Like when you're struggling at times and you don't really have a lot of business, like what was your mindset and how did you like get through those times?
Oh yeah, work ethic, and what that means is, you know, are you a good worker? A lot of people feel like, oh, you know, I can't, you know, work for somebody, or I can't do this type of work, when what they really mean is that they're not a good worker in general. See, like in order to get to be in a boss situation, you have to, you know, be in a situation where you've been mentored or been underneath somebody. So, you know, for me, I never got to a place where I was dependent on anybody else to support my craft. So if I needed things financially, I wasn't waiting for mom and dad to believe in me. I wasn't waiting on my homeboys to, you know, for us to get our money together. And I got on Subway and I got the flipping sandwiches, you know what I'm saying? Like, because that's what, you know, at the end of the day, I didn't want to hang my hat on somebody else's opinion or someone else's support for me to get to where I need to be. And a lot of times we think that we need this person, we need that person, when in reality we need to become the best version of ourselves. Meaning, you know, how can we become good workers, hard workers, you know, and you know, put in the work to level up to get the things that we need without having to rely on somebody else.
Yeah, y'all hear that? The key to success is putting in the self-work that it takes to get to that place. You can't expect for somebody to put in that work for you. You have to put in your own work and do the things that it takes to reach your goal or to achieve your goal.
So Carlin, he ended up being over the the digital media program in the state of Louisiana, and so Capitol High was a charter. They were looking to attract students to the, you know, so they were adding to different classes, and he recommended me. You know, it was like, hey, you know, I was in a band with this guy years ago. He's really good at Photoshop. He does this and that. And so they called me really to convince me to become a teacher. And I was like, I never taught before. You know, and Mr. Singleton will give you this and that. And I was like, "You'll give me what? Okay, so how much? All right,
They willing to pay that price for top dollar.
Absolutely,
People.
absolutely. And it isn't even so much the money. Money is important, but money, a lot of times people think that's the starting point. Money ain't nothing but a signal. It's a signal of, how people feel about certain things. It isn't definite, but the fact that I can look at how they spend their money, that shows me that they're serious, that they care about the program, they're not BSing me, and I'll be able to do what I need to do as a teacher to bring the program to Capital. So the whole digital media program I started, from scratch. There was no digital media before. I was the one that picked out the computers and the equipment and decided we're going to do this and that. And and then I think 3 years later, Mr. McCoy came on. My third year, at first he was an IT guy, and then he came on as a teacher, and then it became us two. And now moving into the next school year is going to be me and two other people. But I didn't apply for Capital. They were like, we want you to come teach.
You excited for your next year?
Excited is a strong word. I'm cautiously optimistic because y'all know that it's a lot of change. A lot of change is happening with the EBR thing, right? So I feel like my biggest thing is I want to be able to be a layer of consistency for everybody that's coming back, because it got to be crazy to be a student at Capital and everything's changing around you. My job, for me personally, I'm going into the year, number one, hopefully to give the new teachers and stuff a reality check of what to expect at this school, and number two, the students that have been there, just a familiar place. Mr. Singleton's class, Coach Stamp is going to be there, thank God. And I just feel like, having us as anchors for the school year, I think is going to help with the transition, just culture-wise and just school spirit-wise, So am I excited? I am, proceed with caution. I'm hoping for the best. I'm optimistic.
You definitely got to get that in big words.
Yeah.
Okay, can you tell me about your relationship with your students? Like, what type of relationship do you have with your students?
Oh, man. My students, Calvin, yeah. Shoot, my students, this past year was probably one of my best years ever, just because every year as a teacher, the biggest thing is, are your kids going to care about what the hell you got to say? And so, I try to establish a baseline level of respect with my classes, and once I have that, once I know what you really mean whenever you act a certain way, and I kind of can fill out everybody, then I can kind of, just let my guard down a little bit. We can, have fun. We can, get through the year. I try to just meet my students where they are. I try to understand them. I try to talk to them like actual people. I try not to talk down to my students. I try to listen. I think that we have a good relationship. A lot of students be trying to skip into my class, so I guess that that means something if I'm the class that they run into and not running away from. So.
Okay, I want to ask you about the financial side of getting started and running your type of business.
Okay.
So, how much does it start to start off?
Start out doing what?
Like shooting music videos, editing, doing graphic design, shooting music videos and stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah, it starts piece by piece. I think that the first major piece that I got in my tool set was a computer, because the computer is probably your first major investment. It costs a lot, but with that computer, you can do designs, you can do edits and all that. So when I was in 05, I got a Dell laptop. I saved up for damn near half a year. My little checks from Subway to get, it was like a $1,300 computer, most I ever spent. The next major investment was a camera, of course. My first camera was a $300 camera I got from Office Depot. Did my first little interviews, all that type of stuff. By the time I got to straight up, I needed something better than my little computer, that I got saved up a while. That means I needed a better job. So I got a job at the Apple store because I wanted an Apple computer. They give you 25% off if you work there. So I was able to, get my first iMac computer the year before I started straight up, and that allowed me to get clients with graphics and all that to where I could, you know, again, make money from my craft. After I got the computer, the next big investment was whenever I shot this video here in Howell Park, my first music video for Straight Up, I was borrowing somebody's camera. And so, and that person actually did some BS, you know, because I remember I wanted to use the camera. My brother was graduating from college at the time. I asked if I could use it, and he made up some lies. Oh no, I need the camera, you know, and he wouldn't let me do it or whatever. And so from there, I just bought my own camera because I realized I couldn't be borrowing anybody's stuff because, you know, they're gonna pull some. Can y'all curse on here? I realized you pull some bitch shit, you know what I'm saying? And you know, and you don't really want to have to be up under that. You don't want to have to, you know, I don't know. So that was the first two major investments: a Mac computer and a Canon camera. It was like $900, which again, that was some serious money for me at the time. But then everything else, like, you know, I've accumulated over the years, piece by piece. I never, you know, I have over $10,000 worth of equipment, but I never just dropped a 10K ever, you know, on anything. It was like, you know, strategically, I'll get this light now. I'm gonna save up to buy this $200 screen, this, you know, $500 stabilizer, you know, upgrade my computer during this year. And so, cost-wise, you know, even before all that equipment, I was like, y'all, I was looking at my available resources that I had, you know. Before my laptop that I bought for myself, I had an old desktop at my mom's house. That's all I had. It had the Windows Movie Maker on it. So I used the old Windows Movie Maker until I could afford, you know, more. You know, I always try to evaluate the resources that I have, and then, like I said, invest piece by piece.
Okay, another financial question. Like, what could you give us, like, some recommendations of what to go through and like people we could use to get equipment like that?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of what to buy, in terms of you know, how to get to the type of equipment that you need, is that what you're kind of trying to get to? I would say you have to look at you know, at what you need for what you're trying to produce. If you know that, hey, I'm going after doing podcasts, well, everybody might have this expensive camera, but they're shooting, you know, short films or skits and music videos, so you might not necessarily need, you know, that, you know what I'm saying, type of setup. I would look for examples of what, you know, other people who you're trying to get, like, what do they shoot with, and then try to save for that. You know, in terms of like using people for the actual equipment, like I just said, I wouldn't too much take that route of trying to find somebody who already has the stuff and you use it, because at that point you're using their stuff and you're making an unnecessary tie, unless it's your business partner. But if it's not your business partner, you know, I wouldn't rely or go look into, you know, use somebody else's stuff. I would try to figure out.
Yeah, think too, because I ain't gonna lie, when people start seeing you do good, and you know you're using their stuff, they'll get paid and doing this shit.
Yeah.
Like, what you just said, stuff like that.
Yeah. For real.
Yeah, okay, this is another question, okay? How can somebody that's like a teenager start a side hustle to be able to afford all the equipment and get into it? Like, say they got a laptop, what side hustles can they do on their laptop to make money?
Great question. I feel like the first step to making the online money, and it's a little counterintuitive, you have to have a plan that operates outside of the internet first. Meaning, you have to find a way to get real people to your site, have a plan for that. So if I were a teenager, I wish somebody would have told me this. Hey, you need to get onto the festival circuit, what's it called, the vendor markets, that type of stuff, like where they have there are events that take place around the city where local businesses come together for the purpose of selling stuff to the community. If I was a teenager and I had like a brand or something like that, I would be all over events like that with my booth, selling things and directing them to my online business to, you know, to further to keep that going on. You know, that's probably the biggest piece of advice, because what ends up happening is you'll set up your business, check, you'll have everything, you have a beautiful website, but ain't nobody using it. Nobody's going there. So like, what's your, you know, but if you start out, you know, tapping into real world people, hey, you're showing up, you know, month after month at the flea markets, at the, you know, at you're a sponsored vendor at the different events. You ever been to an event that got the booths with the people? You can be there. Like, there's no age restriction to that. And in fact, a promoter would be really happy to have you as a vendor. I could connect you with the promoter. A good friend of mine, Allie Stacks, and her partner Diz, they support small businesses all the time. And I will definitely put y'all in contact with them if that's something that y'all would be interested in, because that's something I feel like a lot of people don't tap into as like a really big resource.
Because one thing about getting your customers too, what I learned about marketing is you got to get in front of your customers. You got to find your customers. Like I was thinking about like in the future when we get a little bigger, get a boutique in the mall. But I know that even though we got a boutique, the customers gonna be there, but we still gotta go to them. So we gotta stop them. Hey, this our brand top dollar. Our brand is gonna impact them for the community in a positive way. They're gonna fall in love with our story, which gonna make them fall in love with our brand.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So that's important about getting in front of them. You wanna ask another question, Pat?
Yeah. Could you give? I'm gonna ask you some questions. Like, I'm gonna ask you a question about some advice.
Okay.
Could you give the kids, the world, Top Dollar Talks, some advice on how to become big and successful and how to get through their ups and downs?
Okay. I guess I'm interpreting that question as, how can you get to a certain level even if you have certain things that are working against you? Yeah, so let's see, I'm trying to give think of the short and sweet version, because I don't want to have y'all out here all day, because I feel strongly about this. Let's start simple. So don't be defined by any of your hardships. Don't be defined by any of your struggles, because it's really what you do with it that makes you. It isn't having the struggle itself. And a lot of times I see young people kind of take on the hurt as an identity. So it's like, not only did I go through this, I lost my homeboy, I lost my people, I have this betrayal, but I wear that as a part of my identity, as opposed to something that I am overcoming and using as my story, and it's a slight distinction. I can tell somebody who's been through something, but they're turning it into something, versus somebody who's just wearing it almost like a badge of honor. And I'm like, that's kind of backwards. You don't, want to wear your struggle as a badge of honor. It's something that, you should, it's important to address, and that goes, and the reason why you have to look at it like that is because that's the only way that you can be independent and move forward and not have to rely on other people, you know what I'm saying? Because if you're going through something, already, you can't take on this business venture whenever you have this and this, that going on with you personal-wise, this, struggle holding you back. You have to address that first so you can become whole to move forward and,
so you can become great.
Yeah, and that sounds, it sounds like, I don't want to belittle how difficult, I know people be in some real life stuff. No matter how real it is, you still have to address it. You still have to, get the help that you need to overcome whatever type of, healing that you might need to, from whatever situation.
Still gotta grow to be a great person one day, or be whatever you want to be.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, the world doesn't owe you understanding. Like, a lot of people feel like, oh, well, I'm like this because of blah, 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 so why don't you understand? Well, the world doesn't owe you understanding. It's on you to become, whole and functioning and integrated into society, to stand on your own, too. So it's like, yeah, the best thing you can do for yourself is get whatever kind of help that you can to, to heal from whatever type of things you might need healing from, or to overcome whatever situation, whether it's a home situation. If it's a bad home situation, you need to be on your stuff, getting a job to get out of the home. Like sometimes that's some people's best option. Because I know a lot of people, they, have just all kind of stuff going on at home. Well, until you get a job and are able to support yourself independently, you have to deal with that BS. And so that's your struggle you have to get over in order to become independent. I could list several other examples, but I feel like that's the gist. If you're going through stuff and you want to be successful, address that stuff first, because it ain't going nowhere. Don't wait till you have money and that stuff is still there, and address it first. And that way you'll be clear-minded, you'll be
you for tuning in to another Top Dollar Talk with Top Dollar Talk.